One reason I'm speaking fast, and some people might say, well, it's too fast to understand. Well, in the interest of time, we've got to get out of here. We've got 1 hour left. This is the last of the fourth tape. And even if you can't hear every word, hopefully it'll just kind of wash over and you'll get the feeling of it. Okay, so the last tape might run out, so I will read the last two sentences here. Affliction, your beatings, defeats, poverty, plagues, being despised are by design. You dwell in the midst of violence and oppression. Your obligation to obedient servitude, that's the word obed, which is your worship, which is the word obed, as we talked earlier, is to adapt you to kadoshness, set-apartness, to fabricate you into the condition of being like a thick rope. That's ob. Authentic, genuine, confirmable as the very axiom of veracity. You, in and amongst the beasts, is just killing them. And that doesn't mean that the other people who are not Israel are animals. It means they have an animalistic instinct as humans not living up to their full potential, which is men of Yah. You provoke them. The nature of inhuman brutality in you is driven to extinction. So you challenge for an attack. You look like you're weaklings. Your dainty, delicate tenderness. And we think, oh, that's like a girly man. No, dainty, delicate. Dainty, there's this Hebrew word that you could find in the dictionary, is to say the gourmet, most expensive, choice treasures of refinement, of Yahweh's very best. So we may think dainty of lace and little, it's not that. It provokes and irritates your foreigners, or those that are surrounding you, which is the whole idea. Your enemy is watching you, delighting at pleasure, raging to calculate how you do it. What is the root of your success? Okay, the next verse. For in 6 days built Yahweh the heavens and the earth, and the seas, and all that is in them. And he rested on Yom the 7th, the day of the 7th, Al-Kan. That's like the Al-Kan highway. And which is to say, and certainly basically he blessed it, Yahweh, the Yom, the Shabbat, and called it Kadosh, or made it Kadosh, or sanctified it. So I'm just reading you from the Hebrew word to word. This is the way it's translated then. Therefore, just like my own hand, this is my signature. 6 days established, appointed to proactively command, force, accomplish. Yahweh caused the assignment to exist. The idea and design of this track, Western power and all its pleasure, staged, theatrics. My 7 Zion weapon vow will carry it all away. It's a picture of that Evan Stone I was talking about earlier. Honest. Only one kneeling to Yahweh's day gets back his delicacy, the power to produce and all that goes with it. He will lead to lay down quietly in a higher place. In the day I return to my 7-fold oath, the blessing side of your option, the good part, as promised, Yahweh's day of giving back the consecrated status of sacredly betrothed to himself. Now this sounds like the Jewish notion of the Messianic era where Israel gets the prestige. It's not Christian, but that's what these words sound like to me. Though I haven't learned it from any Jewish rabbi, I know that they believe that, and the Christians say, they're wrong. And the Jews look at Isaiah 53 and where it says the Messiah will get whooped and beaten, and so the Christians say, see, it's pointing to the Messiah, and they're saying, no, he's talking about Israel. No, he's talking about the Messiah. No, he's talking about Israel. Well, the fact of the matter is, Yeshua is the quintessential model of Israel, the archetypical, iconic image. So he represents the entire nation, as does any man of Israel. It's a collective. So they're both right. Not only does Isaiah 53 describe what happened to Yeshua, the man sent to take the burden of Israel, like the high priest said, gee, better that one man should suffer than the whole nation. But Israel's right by saying Israel's getting whooped and beaten as per Isaiah 53, because Israel as a whole was supposed to be priests to the world, and they forsook the covenant and went away and preferred to be lorded over by the Elohim Achrim of the nations of them that surrounded them. the fools, the galut, the idiots. Oh, our forefathers inherited lies. That's a prophecy that in later days, people will say, wait a minute, what's happened? We've inherited lies from our forefathers. Empty, vain things that have no profit, account to nothing, don't do us any good. It doesn't do you any good to call Sunday the holy day. You can go to church on Sunday, you can study on Sunday, you can rest on Sunday, you can worship on Sunday, but it's not the sanctified day to not work. You don't have to go to synagogue on Saturday. You don't have to read the Bible on Saturday. You don't have to sing songs on Saturday. He just said, do not work because I said so. That's all. You can have a party in the middle of the snow with lights and call it Christmas if you want to. You can even celebrate spring when everything comes back to birth. And you can call it Easter if you want to, though Easter comes from the word Ishtar, which is Ashtar, which is the goddess of fertility of the Canaanites, which Yahweh said he hates, that he doesn't want the sound of on the lips of his people. So if you want to worship on Easter and call it Easter, that's up to you. You can rejoice in the spring if you want to, but he didn't give that festival. He said, my festivals are the 7. Pesach, Chag HaMatzot, Shavuot, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and Shemini Atzeret. Now those, he said, were his festivals. And the word Moedim literally means you were appointed to be at a certain place. How do you prove that you're keeping the instructions? Because you'll be at the place at the time when he said to be there. That's the proof. That's the sign. You say, oh, we are his. You know, there's this thing in the book of Revelation, I believe, where it talks about a sign that, the sign, the mark of the beast on the arm or the forehead or whatever. And what is it? You say David Matthews was just basically saying, Yahweh already determined the sign. If you want to have the proof of the sign that you're his people, keep the Shabbat and the festivals. Now, if you want to party the other days with the pagans, go ahead, but keep the festivals. It's the replacement of the festivals, the replacement of Shabbat with Sunday, which is the problem. It's not the fact that you're going to church on Sunday or having a Christmas party. That's not the problem. It's the replacement. It's Yahweh said this, and Constantine and the Vatican and anybody else says, don't do that, do this. As a matter of fact, the Jews say it's illegal for a Goyim, a Gentile, to keep the Shabbat or to keep the festivals. Why? Because they're not Israel. But anybody can be Israel, and the proof you're Israel as you keep the Shabbat and the festivals. That's the sign. That's the insignia. That's the branding iron. That's the tet. That's the proof that you're in the het. Because you've been cut off, Zion, from the darkness outside the world. And the only reason you're allowed to come back and do this is because Yeshua, the Vav man, was Zion, put to death outside the het, lifted up, Nun Samit, to say, see, everybody can come home. It's like playing hide and go seek, where everybody's scattered and hiding and everybody, And he says, okay, you guys can come back to the kingdom if you want to. I've allowed you permission to come back and enter, though I'm the guy who kicked you out, dispersed you, made you forget you were ever my people, made you forget you were ever part of this covenant, and now I'm saying, come on back, you can come to me. So it's like a picture of a castle, the Chet, with a moat, the Zion, and the Vav is the drawbridge. The Vav man Zion, Yeshua lifted up on the execution stake and saying, you acknowledge me, my blood counts for decontaminating you like the red heifer sacrifice from being in contact with death and destruction and the ways of out there in the darkness. And if you're willing to acknowledge this blood, it'll cleanse you, decontaminate you, so you're entered back into the kingdom, sitting at the Father's table, learning his words, his instructions, doing his things, and receiving all the perks and benefits because he has allowed us to come back in, which we didn't deserve. And that's the interface, I believe, between the Christian doctrine and the Hebraic thing. Okay, another way to read this verse. Therefore, this insignia is my branding logo. 6 white horses at a gallop. 6 foundational white marble pillars. 6 white roses, rejoicing in the astounding beauty of each phase. Each one of those 6 brought about at the hand of Yahweh. each assigned their own location. Evaluate the heavens as placements illustrating to the earth of righteousness. The heavens, the earth, the sea, and all, everything, everyone who among them, by them, authenticates the guidance, the quiet way of leading, silent testimony, which is the manner of staging, and everything in them which confirms the assignment. The work of leading outsiders to the big white fence of the Creator's dominion of light and life is represented on stage as resting on the seventh day. Absolutely. Yahweh is testing you with this day of the Shabbat as a means of choosing he who is dedicated and to cull those of inferior quality who will bow to the consecrated assignment, who will douse, detain the kindled burning, who will walk out that time, Yom HaShabbat, for restful quietness. Next verse. Kavod, which is give glory to et abika, which is your father, ve ameka, which is your mother, for the sake of extending the days upon the earth that Yahweh your Elohim has given you. Struggle with difficulty like no other. To regard with heaviness the basic factor of your origin. Energetically consent to the matters presented to your forefathers, which is exactly the same conditional terms presented to you. Your appropriate response to which will be prolonging the status of your dominion and also of your posterity with you. Your children's yoke is exactly the same as yours, with equal value. As you authenticate and corroborate the straight way, you will be blessed, as it is the strength and power of Yahweh himself bestowed you. And two, the disregard of these matters, leaving the path, is to your destruction. You will perish and be destroyed as you imagine within your heart to silence these words of Yahweh El-Heka, which he gave for you to possess, which are the very terms and stipulations which you are commanded to teach and rehearse. Same verse read again. Unlike any other, your purpose, your calling, the secret mission you were offered, such weighty honor, the burden of wealth and respect, and the conditional terms you were offered included affliction. It was engineered in order to determine exactly who of you would choose the yoke of voluntarily conforming to the likeness of that obligation which Yahweh El-Heka gave you. El-Heka is Yahweh your Elohim. And now here's a few verses. Do not kill, do not commit adultery, do not steal. And do not basically do not afflict your neighbor with the word is succor. Shin Kuf Resh, which is to make a sucker out of somebody, to trick them, to deceive them, to lie to them. To translate, don't bear false witness against your neighbor. They're a little different. Okay, so here's these different ones laid out together. The first, there's no satisfying answer or response or other to reconciliation in favor. No alternative argument, no other matter is an option. It's all death and drought compared to searching for the dazzling straight answer to the most difficult question. Same verse again. For the record, killing, murder, suicide, assassination is unacceptable as the means to resolve a difficult situation. No killing will clarify or satisfy that which is sought for. Nor will adultery beautify or make better the lesson to be learned. Adultery does not give advantage to the opportunity available had one been open to address the circumstances. It opens one's home to a vicious killer being made vulnerable. By the way, read that as no second choice options, nothing of an alternative character other than the terms of this covenant. Next verse. About do not steal. Do not attempt to smuggle in some banned treasure. It will dishonor you and depreciate your treasure. You will become hollowed out, unprotected, as you do not protect this prophecy. No deception or theft can ornament a man of understanding. Cheating deludes the benefits of intelligence. Last verse there. Do not torment yourself about your purpose. It will happen when it's time. Until then, the evil you associate with is evidence to what a sucker you are. Your own weakness, your credibility is indicated. No affliction by your neighbor can remove the refreshing drink of Yahweh's choicest ornamentation, which he has longed for with desire to bestow upon you. And the last one here. Do not covet the house of your neighbor. Do not covet his wife of your neighbor, and his manservant and maidservant, and his shore, which is ox, and donkey, and anything that belongs to your neighbor. No lovely thing of Yahweh's house can cause you harm or lead you to wickedness. No boundary of a restricting fiery fence to contain you enslaved. To verify truthfulness, to prove for certain. Look at them as guidelines which keep out the enemy. Foam up with passion to interpret everything as to strengthen you against evil, as your war cry of triumph. The other way to read that same verse. There is no limit, nothing longed for, desired within the parameters of your calling. So do not take pleasure in setting boundaries for your neighbor's house. No delight is confined. Anyone who authentically walks straight. Your thoughts, your pasture you are led to, is according to how you direct your energies to facilitate an other's goal. The ruling principle, the driving force, the single most important factor of all considerations, in order to determine what will be your aleph, or ayin kaf actually is the word, which is to say what comes back to you. Here's how the scales work. Don't establish the borders of your own confines of misery. Don't construct your own jail by longing after that which belongs to your neighbor. The burden, the restriction, the obligation, or the subjugation. Your thought, your aim determines your own blessing. Incubating negation according to all you devise for your fellow. That's the last of the Ten Commandments. So what he's basically saying here by this one, Yeshua said, blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Whatever you would have someone do to you, do to them. And then the Jews have this thing, which is the inverse, is they don't do anything you wouldn't want your neighbor to do to you. But what this happens to say, what it looks like it's saying behind the reading of the words in the Ten Commandments is to say, you're going to determine your own life. This is the way it works. You incubate your own negation, your negativism. If you seem to lay a trap for your enemy, you're going to step into the trap. With the attitude you have to bind him, to impose a burden, a restriction, an obligation, or a subjugation, the same thing is going to happen to you. And you might say, oh, come on, look at the fat cats, the rich guys. They seem to get away with everything. It's like, the game's not over yet. Maybe not in this life, but certainly not in the one to come. Because from what you read, what comes after you die is simply another day, an extension, no different than day and night, from this realm to the next realm. And it ain't over yet. Every single thing he promises is with repercussion. So here's the point, which we were talking about during the break for a moment. Moshe said, and I think it's Deuteronomy 33, part of the Song of Moshe, I believe where he said it, and right when he's concluding all the matters of the Torah, he said, your enemies will try to deceive you. Why? Because if Israel is keeping the covenant, Yahweh is protecting them, fighting for them, blessing them, giving them prestige, giving them wealth, giving them intelligence, and the enemies can't do anything to Israel when Israel's blessed. So what does the enemy do? It's a model of Balaam and Balak. Balak goes, let's see, these guys are going to overwhelm me. There's nothing I can do. And he sees them slaughter Og and Sihon, the king of the Amorites. And it's like, gosh, tell you what, I'm going to get a prophet. He's going to come in and I'll have him curse the people. Supernatural warfare. Doesn't work. Because Balaam said, I can't curse who Yahweh's blessed. It doesn't work that way. But then Balaam says, hey, you got some cash? I'll give you some insight, but I'll tell you how to get them to curse themselves. The reason why Israel is blessed and unconquerable is because there's no sorcery in Israel. And sorcery has to go back to this Elohim Achrim business. There's no sorcery and divination. They don't go into Kabbalah. They don't go into the occult. They don't go into magic and sorcery and witchcraft. It's not about that. It's about the words of Yahweh and regarding them as His own face. Seek my face. The word face is Penei. Pei Nun Yod. Pei is a mouth, that which opens. Nun, like a baby jumping out of womb. Nun is like a fish jumping out of water. Nun is that which jumps out of your mouth. What comes out of your mouth? Words. Yod as a suffix means my. It's a hand that works. It's something that causes an event. Yahweh said, when He spoke, the creation of the universe happened. When we speak, something's going to happen. Well, we don't know about that. But Yeshua said, if you have faith, or the word is faithfulness, same word, you could say to this mountain, be removed and cast into the sea, and it'll happen. He spoke to the fig tree, and it dried up and withered. He spoke, and people were healed. People were restored limbs. Things happen when you speak. Why? Because Penei, the word face, yoked to my face, in regards to my face, Yahweh's face is His words. When the people go back and look at the words of Yahweh, it's not Elohim Achrim, it's not other Christ figures or titans or legendary heroes with great powers. It's Yahweh's word. And He says, when you regard my words, my favor is upon you, because you'll be conformed to my image, and my words are supreme over heaven and the earth. Even the angels, those established in the higher realms, must conform to these words, which were revealed to you, my people, on the face of the earth. And therefore your enemies will be bewildered, confused, scared, and weakened when you, Israel, regard these words. But your enemies will try to trick you, then they can conquer you. Because if they can slip in sorcery, divination, witchcraft, occult, Kabbalah. Now, I don't know how to define the word Kabbalah exactly, but all I'm throwing that in because there's some people who think we're doing Kabbalah. Why? Because the people who do Kabbalah study the words. Imagine that. There's people who study the Hebrew words because those who do witchcraft use Hebrew words. They also use Greek and Latin, but Hebrew is the most powerful language. Now, why should those who do occult witchcraft and sorcery and Kabbalah, which is contrary to Yahweh's face, why do they think that Hebrew is a powerful language? Because there's something about knowing what these words are, they have an understanding of what He made. There's a power that we don't even understand because we don't mess with witchcraft and magic and sorcery. But they do, and they know that there's a power. We don't know there's any power, there's just words. I have no idea what might happen, but Yeshua said, if you're in me and I in you, there's nothing that is impossible. Nothing will be kept back from you. We pointed to this one word. My son wrapped up in the covenant? Covenant? Where's my son wrapped up in the covenant? Let's look at this one word right here in the middle. Ha, He, Vav, Zadi, Aleph, Tav, Yod, Kaf. It's the word for I released you from the land of Egypt. I exported you. I exodused you out of the land of Egypt. Hey, behold, Vav, the man. Zadi, it's the resurrection, it's the sprout. Aleph, Tav, the first and the last, beginning of the end. Yod, my, hand of the Creator. Kaf, you, Kaf, the Torah. He is the Torah manifested as the man who is the righteous one. The Aleph and the my, Aleph, Tav. He is the one who claimed to be the beginning and the end, the first and the last, by whom all things were made. He is the man who was slain, who resurrected, who's the Aleph Tav, who's the creator and the giver of the Torah made flesh. Well, gee, it sure sounds like Yeshua, HaMashiach, to me. But that's not Christian, that's Hebrew, and it's not Jewish, because this was from the foundations of the earth that plan was established. This is the Hebrew alphabet, and this is the word for Exodus. My point is, to go back and look at these words and say, where's the power? The power is The rabbis have lied to the Jews that Yeshua is not the Messiah. But they're right saying that Jesus Christ, who represents the annihilation of these words, is also not the Messiah. Yeshua is the Messiah, and any Jew who wants to come to the truth will recognize it, because this is not Christian. The Christians have lied to you, but the rabbis have lied to you also. This is the truth. This is the words of Yud, He, Vav, He, Elhecha, your Elohim, if you want to be resurrected on the day when He comes back, according to the terms of the covenant, Aleph, Tav, Et. That's what this is about. So the point is, this is not witchcraft, this is not sorcery, but there's power in these words, because every one of these letters represents something that caused the universe to exist, which is something that's His own identity, which is the Mashiach Himself. Every one of these 22 letters, if you know what these 22 letters mean, it is the identity of the true Messiah. And if you don't think it's Yeshua, and you don't think it's Jesus, and you don't think it's Rabbi Smearson, or you don't think it's Muhammad, then who is it? Could any one of those guys fit this description? The Infinite One, who manifested in human or flesh cosmology form, who was the sent one, the dispatched one, who came from heaven to the earth to reveal the way of the door, who was the man who was put to death, who was entombed, who was the full basket of everything he was supposed to be, the epitome of humankind, the creator of the universe, Kaf Lamed. Now here's an interesting thing. If you look at a menorah, that's the first half of the alphabet, by the way. But if you look at, now this is tonight's the first day of Hanukkah. If you look at a menorah, look at a 7-branch menorah. 6 branches with one in the middle. The one in the middle is called the Shemesh. It's the same word for sun, which is Sheen, Mem, Sheen, which is also a quick, nimble servant, one who is about the business of doing what he's instructed to do. Yeshua came down to do His Father's will, and He says, I'm the vine, you're the branches. You do what I say, I'm flowing through you, nothing is impossible, I will empower you, I will give you what it takes for you. You look at the book of Revelation, it talks about walking amidst the candlesticks. Well, there's a weird way to read that. That was coming out of Greek and Latin and in English. Was there 7 candlesticks, or was there one candlestick with 7 branches? There's no way to know. If you look close in Exodus, I believe it's 25, where He talks about the design of the menorah, what He says was, on each of the 6 branches, there's 3 cups. But there was one, like, reflector. Well, if you say there's 1 reflector and 3 cups, I've never seen a menorah made this way, other than I made one, but the point is, a cup is where you put the oil and have the wick. So I read it as being, there was 7 branches with 7 reflectors facing towards the front, but if there's 3 cups on each of the 6 branches, but in the center one, there was 4 with a reflector. Well, if you have 3 times 6 is 18 plus 4 is 22. Does that mean there's 22 actual lights, 22 cups? 22 letters of the alphabet. So does the menorah actually portray a symbol of the 22 letters of the alphabet divided into 7? Well, if you take 22 divided by 7, it equals 3.14, which happens to be the letter pi, which is a whole other thing, but that gets into some engineering and mathematics. But the point about that is that that's an indicator that Yahweh was up to something here. So, if you say, well, let's just say, for example, I've seen people spread this out different ways, but look at it this way. If you say there's 3 here, so that's Aleph, Bet, Gimel. What does that mean as a word? That's a study. We've done that, and that's on some of the other things, but just to say, here, Dalet, Hey, Vav. What does that mean as a word? If you go back and you look at here, you'll see exactly what they mean. So you can take this and do that, and that's part of that study there. Zayin, Chet, Tet. And here you have Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem. Those are the 4 in the center. And then you have Nun, Samech, Ayin, you got Pei, Zadi, Kuf, and then you have Resh, Shin, Tav. Okay. What's the big deal about Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem? It actually spells a word. And what the word is, to have the power and capacity to prevail and contain it all. Well, if Yeshua is the Shemesh, then He did have the power and capacity to contain it all, and he then, taking it all, will give it to those who are in him, that they may also have the power and capacity to contain it all and to prevail. But the interesting thing is, if you take off the letter Yod, the Yod, remember, is a hand at work. That means he will. So if he won't, if you won't, if you don't do what he said, because that letter Yod is the letter that means do what he said, the doing, the action, the hand that works, KLM, where we get the word calm, everything stops. It's where you get the word calamity, kalam. English comes out of Hebrew phonetics. If you don't do what he said, you get calamity. The other interesting thing is, Ekal is where you get the word power, capacity to prevail, and Lamed Mem is the word that means unto them, and Kaf Lamed is the word which means all, or every, or any. And if you read the word Lamed Kaf, it means go, or this is to you. So you could say, he, the Shemesh, Yeshua, was sent in order to enable us to have the power and capacity to prevail, because everything he gave to us, Kaf Lamed, was for us to be able to do what he said. And yet we are told by those who would try to deceive us, oh, you can't do this. It's too hard for you. He never meant for you to do it. It's impossible for humanity, for any human, to do what he said. That's why he did away with it. He had to do away with it because you couldn't keep the instructions. Moshe said, I'm warning you guys, your enemies cannot prevail over you unless you allow sorcery and divination and you abandon these words. And the enemies, they go, you know, certainly Israel's own book must give the secret, so they get 70 scholars to make a Septuagint and translate those secret Hebrew words into Greek, please, so that we can find out how you guys get your strength. Isn't that a little like Delilah getting Samson to give away his strength? Will you please tell me what makes you so strong? They're watching and go, wow, how do they do it? Well, hey, let's get 70 scholars to tell us what his secret Hebrew words mean. Put it into Greek. And what do they say? Oh, hey, gee, if we do sorcery, divination, and if we don't keep these words, we'll be weak as any man, and you can conquer us. So what does Israel's enemies do? They tell Israel, you can't keep these words. He never meant for you to keep these words. Oh, by the way, he sent a Messiah, so you don't have to keep the words. And if you didn't even think to keep the words, we're going to call you the worst name in the world. Worst name. Oh, yeah, we're going to call you a Judaizer. And we will accuse you of blaspheming the blood of your own dear Savior. Now, you wouldn't want to do that. In fact, if you even think to go back under the law, why, you might be in jeopardy of hellfire because you're blaspheming the Holy Spirit. Meanwhile, the Ruach means the prescribed path of the wind. Yahweh's breath, Yahweh's own breath, the prescribed path is what the word Ruach means. The prescribed path of Yahweh's breath is Aleph through Tav. And the word Kadesh is his personal expression of his heart, pure and clean. So the Ruach HaKodesh, otherwise known as Holy Spirit, is actually the alphabet. So to change the Hebrew alphabet into Greek and then Latin and then English blasphemes the Holy Spirit. Get that? So to go to study Hebrew, you're doing the opposite of what they've been accusing the people of, who have a heart, who otherwise would be obediently worshiping Yahweh by keeping the Shabbat and the festivals. Constantine, the Council of Nicaea, he actually, I got a copy of it, it's on the internet, you can look at it. Anybody can look it up on the internet. He said, it is illegal to not work on Saturday. It is illegal to work on Sunday. He changed the day to usurp his power, change everything around, and Yahweh said, I'm going to let him do it. As a matter of fact, if you read closely the scriptures, you might come to the conclusion that Yahweh put him up to it. Yahweh might have been, not the devil, Yahweh might have been the guy who put Constantine up to it, because Yahweh said, I told my people that I was going to put a curse on them, and I'm not going to change my word. And if I can't find somebody who will tear my people apart and give them a bunch of lies, then I'm going to have to inspire them myself. And I can't show you the verse or exactly where he says that, but there's other verses who allude to that, that Yahweh himself is the guy that designed this whole thing. And Yahweh himself said, I gave my people the truth. I gave the people my best. My choice best is the word that's ayin dalet yod. Choice, best, treasure. The word ayin dalet is witness and testimony. The Ark of the Testimony is not the Ark of the Covenant, it's the Ark of the Testimony, which is ayin dalet. The word ayin dalet actually is the word that means until. Daniel 12:4. Hide the words and seal the book until the time. That word until what time? Ayin is an eyeball. Dalet is the door. Eyeball means understand, weigh and measure, determine, calculate, figure it out. Figure out. Did you understand the door? Ayin Tav. Tav is sign of the covenant. Figure out the covenant. Understand the covenant. What's the covenant? I just said that the alphabet is the covenant. And the meanings of the letters of the covenant is the identity of the Messiah and the terms of negotiated agreement between Yahweh and Israel as a marriage contract. Therefore, to understand the covenant is to understand that the alphabet is the relationship between Yahweh and Israel as a ketubah, as a marriage contract. But it's yoked to understanding the door. What door? What door? Yeshua said, I'm the door. No one gets to the Father except through me. I'm the door. But the Jews don't read the New Testament. They don't acknowledge Yeshua as the Messiah because Jesus Christ stepped in and said, oh, there's no door. I'm the door. You don't have to do anything over there. But meanwhile, Yeshua said, no, if you want to come to the Father, you come through me to the Father. And the Father's the guy that expressed everything according to the terms of the covenant. And if you do away with the terms of the covenant, then you got just the guy claiming to be the door. And if you don't acknowledge the guy claiming to be the door, you maybe acknowledge the significance of Hebrew as a powerful language that you maybe can do some Kabbalah, occult witchcraft, and sorcery with. But if you don't understand the door, this catch-22, like the 22 letters, this catch-22 of Daniel 12:4, you will not unlock these words. Hide the words, seal the book, Daniel, until the time of Kuf Zadi. Kuf Zadi means awakening, sprouting open, unbreaking the shackle. Kuf is a picture of a shackle. And it means later on after this. Zadi is a sprout. A shackle breaking open. Why? Because Pei Zadi, the word pizza, literally means an open mouth of scattering. So a shackle breaking open to set the captives free is Kuf Zadi. He said, hide the words and seal the book, ayin dalet ayin tav, until the time of the awakening, the breaking open. So to say, well, then this is a conditional term. It's an equation. It's not just, oh yeah, we have the covenant, we're the chosen people, or no, we don't need no covenant. The covenant was done away with. We're the chosen people who acknowledge the door. It's both. What he said was, Yeshua said, I'm the door. So if you understand that Yeshua is to understand the covenant, and to understand the covenant is to understand Yeshua who's the door, then to understand the alphabetic letters being the identity of the Messiah, which is the door to get back to the Father's house so we could do what he said, because there's a blessing and a privilege and a responsibility in it where we get the benefits of the kingdom of being his people according to the blessing instead of the curse which we've had for all these years. Then to come back to look at this alphabet as his secret message that he hid for 2,730 years, 2,500 years, Daniel is about 500 BC, is breaking open this seal. Yahweh put a seal on his words. So to have this conversation is to accomplish the terms of this requirement before it could possibly break open. So the point of this is to say, we're doing that by having this talk, which means suddenly everything's liable to change, because my choice best treasure, Eddie, is this stuff. He revealed himself. That is his choice best treasure. Yeshua, this is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. This is my choice best treasure. That's the one who's testified by the alphabet. Israel is my firstborn son, he says. Is Ephraim one that I could just cast aside and forget? No, as often as I remember him, I think of him more and more. My heart longs for him. That's what Yahweh said about Ephraim. But the Jews say, oh no, anybody who comes back to Israel, anybody who comes back to the door, they're a Jew. It's like, who is Ephraim? The northern kingdom. Judah and Israel are constantly vying for each other's supremacy, but the kingdom was given to Joseph. And it says, well, until Shiloh comes, Judah will retain the scepter. Who's Shiloh? It means the one to whom it belongs. Who is it given to? Joseph. And Joseph had Ephraim and Manasseh, of which were the 10 northern tribes. So Yehuda had a place for a certain period of time for Ephraim, the northern kingdom, to come back, and with the responsibilities of a Shin Resh, a Sar, a prince, to take what was hidden, which is too hard, and turn it into a beautiful song, into a poem of explaining Yahweh's choice, best treasure to his people, to anyone who would come to be this kingdom. So, sons of Isaac, sons of Ishmael, sons of Esau and Yaakov, and even those of the people who were trapped as slaves in Egypt, in Mitzrayim, between the streets. You can come back to this covenant. Anybody can be Israel. Whether you have Islam, whether you have Christianity or Rabbinical Judaism, come back to the covenant. It's time. Now, does anybody else have anything they want to say? Because it's pretty near time to quit.
That verse that you were trying to think of, where Yah was possibly setting them up for this, that verse is that he will choose their delusions.
He will choose their delusions. So Yahweh, again, there's a verse confirming the fact that Yahweh himself is setting his people up. So here's my point. Yahweh himself set a decree of a punishment, a banishment, a convoluted, confused, distortion, a imbalance to his people, and he said, you can come back to the covenant. Moses said, your enemies will try to deceive you. So the enemies of Israel reads the words themselves because they get people to translate into their language, and they say, oh, well, we're going to read the words, but Israel is not going to read the words. So we're going to change things, and Israel is going to go stupid, and Israel's going to forget the covenant, and Israel's not going to regard these matters because their fearless leaders are going to tell them they don't have to. So therefore, as long as Israel does not regard these matters, Israel doesn't get the covenant back. And besides that, it was under the block of time, which is the 2,730-year curse, multiplied 7 times. The word 7 is a vowel. Leviticus 26 with Ezekiel chapter 4, 390-day curse that was put on the house of Ephraim. That's where that comes from. 2,730, 7 times 390. 721, Assyria conquered Samaria. 2010, the curse would have been lifted if you do the math. The point is, they couldn't have come back anyway. This was all Yahweh's design. But now we're outside of 2010, this is 2012, we can come back. Could it be that the Mayans, the ones that came up with the calendar talking about the end of 2012, could it be that they were maybe some of the off-cast of Israel who said, boy, sometime around this time, and it was lining up with the stars and everything else, and people talk about, the end of the world. Maybe didn't say it's the end of the world, it's the end of an era, the end of an age, the end of something. And could it be that coming back to Yahweh's terms of his Torah is the end of the curse, is the end of the banishment, is the end of the time when this statue reigns, and all that has to happen to Eben, the little stone that comes out not by human armed conflict, hits the regal of the statue and the thing falls over, and Yahweh sets up the prestige that he gave to his people? Maybe. We'll know in a few days, maybe, if there's anything to try to. But the point is, we've been lied to by our enemies. It was so easy. It was so easy. Just say, oh, you don't have to regard that. It's like somebody has a machine gun laying there, and somebody's trying to break in and say, oh, that thing doesn't work. Don't pick that up. You can't scare me with that. There's nothing there. It's probably not got any bullets anyway. Oh, it might even explode in your face if you try to touch it. And you go, oh, I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm not going to capture you. And it's like, well, gee, you had a weapon there. This covenant is Israel's weapon. This covenant is the terms of Yahweh's engagement with his people to give them the supremacy over the earth. So, there was set up a teeter-totter. The way it works, Yahweh says, when Israel's down, the other nations are up. But then, when Israel goes back to the covenant, the teeter-totter shifts. And when Israel goes up, the other nations go down. Well, the other nations don't want to go down. So what the other nations have done is put their leaders in the pulpits, the bema, the high seats, teachers, and they tell Israel, you guys are down until the end of the world. Wait till the rapture. You'll just die. You'll go to heaven. There's nothing to come back to. You don't want to blaspheme the blood of your Savior. You don't want to blaspheme the Holy Spirit. And yet, because of the blood of the Savior, we can come back to these words. The Ruach HaKodesh is these words. The power and supremacy to Israel is these words. It's all about coming back to these words. But if we don't know what these words mean, we'll go read any translation. Oops, sorry, you just stepped off the cliff. If you go back to the translation, you're reading what the authorities have given us. These translations, though there's some merit, are the very tool which has been used for the last 2,000, 3,000 years to lead Israel astray. You can't go back to the normal translations. That's the thing that's caused the problem. The only thing you can go back to is looking at the meanings of the letters and figuring it out, as if you were a blind person reading Yahweh's face. His face, paneh, is his words. Read his words. Determine the character of his face like a blind person. That's what this is about. The reason why we're putting this on the internet, on YouTube, for free, for anybody to watch, is because each person that comes back to these words is another, you might say, drop in the bucket that's going to tip the scales. The rabbis I've heard have this thing that say, and nobody knows how the thing balances, but how many people of the general population, 1 million people doing wickedness, doing carnality, doing normal human stuff, are offset in the balance by one scholar who will study these words? Could it be 1,000,000 to 1? Could it be 10,000 to 1? So you get 10 scholars and it'll offset a city of 10 million? Yahweh said he wouldn't destroy Nineveh if they turned. He said he wouldn't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah and all the cities of the plain if there was 10 righteous. We don't know the balance in these scales, but he said, I need my people studying my words. Why is there only a few people here? I don't know. How much regard? Do you have any idea how much weight you offset compared to the numbers of the hundreds of thousands of people who have no regard, just because you do regard? Because you're trying to learn these words? And he never said, you better learn these words perfectly. It's the regard of paying attention to his words and his ways. It's the attitude of the heart. He didn't put a burden of you have to know grammar properly and you better memorize, 300 verbs. It's not about that. It's the attitude of the regard of his stuff. So when they scorn the festivals, they scorn the Sabbath day, they're not doing it. I'm not scorning somebody wanting to worship on Sunday or even rejoicing in the Savior's birth on Christmas or dying on the cross on Easter. But it's just not the plumb line. Going back to the very beginning, how do we know that we have the truth? Because we got the plumb line that Yahweh gave, and he's the creator of the heavens and the earth. Anybody who denies this plumb line doesn't have the plumb line. They may have some colorful ideas. They may have some interesting things to say. They might even have some angles of truisms. But if it ain't the plumb line, it's not the plumb line. If you're going to build a door and you want the thing to be perfectly level, you use a plumb line. It may be close, but if it's not level, it's more like a cartoon wall. If it's not level, it's not level. It's not plumb, it's not plumb. Yahweh gave the plumb line, and so everybody gets to choose. Do you want to regard his matters or not? How do you know that your denomination is right and everybody else is wrong? Does it even matter? We were listening to somebody the other day said, it just doesn't matter. Just, seeking God in your own heart. To a certain degree, that's true. And to another certain degree, it's not true. There are benefits, which is what this whole reading of the thing of the Ten Commandments were. What are the benefits? And if I could encapsulate the whole thing, it's this. In these Ten Commandments, in these words of Hebrew, he told us how he designed the universe. This is the way it works. And the bottom line is, whatever you do to your neighbor is going to come back to you. And if you want strength, regard these words. Justice, kindness, truth, and mercy. Keep his name and his day as honoring him, and he will favor Israel. He will pour out his blessings, and all Israel's neighbors will be ashamed and confounded and made afraid, and they will give honor to his people Israel as honoring him because his name is upon them. And if you do away with his name and do away with his day, and you do not do truth and kindness to one another, the whole thing comes crashing down, which is what's happening. That's the bottom line.
Hallelujah.
Time's up.
Time's up.
Thank you, Eric. Very good. Thank you, Eric.
Did you get the last sentence on there? Is it still
I don't know. You want to do it again?
That's the last tape.
I think I got it.
Nah, well that's okay.
Eric, you keep talking about the seven feasts.
Yes.
But you're referring to like 3 fall, 3 spring feasts,